A pacer, a warrior, some clippers. It's buy low, it's sell high. It is Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and roadwork ahead? I sure hope it does. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky, joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create the account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Head across to LockedOnDaily.com as well. Sign up for a newsletter for your favorite team and double bang this video and the audio. You do both, and you comment and all that stuff down below. Do you want me to give a disclaimer of what a buy low, sell high show is? Or just quickly, if it's a buy low, you know what? You don't have to go and trade for them. If it's a buy low player, you don't have to panic that you've got them. It means that it's probably going to improve at some point. If it's a sell high, you don't have to get rid of the player. You can just keep it and enjoy it. And you can disagree with whether they're going to be able to stay up at this level or not. I'm just going to provide the reasons why I think they won't. That is how it works. Sell high. Hold them if you want. Sell them if you want. Buy low. Acquire them if you want. Leave it alone if you want. Also totally okay. We're just more looking at things that are trends and which direction they're heading and which direction I think they might be going and all of that sort of stuff. And that's sort of what we're trying to do here on this show. But yeah, as always, when we do this in full transparency mode, we go back and have a look at what happened 2 weeks ago on the show and sort of recap how those buy lows and sell highs trended. And we'll start with the buy lows from 2 weeks ago. Looking at, since in that time frame, what the individual rankings per game of those players were. We had 5 buy lows and sell highs, which we do all the time. Tyrese Maxey was one of the buy lows. He was the 78th ranked player. Since then, he has been 18th. A lot of that is, there was a nice big triple-double last game from him, and the shooting had been absolutely abysmal, and Embiid returning, and Paul George returning also helped that. So I think Maxey sort of is, the reality for him is somewhere in the middle there, like 78th, way too low, 18th, too high. It's a little bit Goldilocks, isn't it? In that 30 to 45 range, I think is reasonable for Tyrese to remain rest of season. Myles Turner was 73rd. I thought that he'd be able to improve. Like, I guess technically he did, which is still an improvement, but it's really not much. It doesn't really matter that much. 73rd to 69th, that's sort of a wash. Desmond Bane was 130th. He has improved. I do think there is plenty more of this to go. 130th up to 116th. I think he's going to be way better than that. So if you did buy low on him and you haven't been super impressed with the results, I do think that there is 100% going to be more stuff coming. Austin Reeves is one that did not work out. He was 161st. He went down to 228th, and then he got hurt. So, yes, there's only I think 1 or 2 games, and maybe even 1 game in that time frame to take that data from. So that's hard to judge, but that is where it is. And then the next one was the thick hogsman Tobias Harris, who was 142nd. And that one's worked out pretty well. He's gone up to 91st since then. I still think he's actually got a little bit more improvement in him, Harris. He hasn't hit the usage numbers that I thought he would this season, but some of the shooting stuff has just been horrendous. And I do think there is a little bit more improvement potentially coming from Toby, but hitting up to 91 is a relatively good result. On the other side of things, the sell high guys, these ones all worked out pretty well. The Bronco Jalen Williams was 5th. And we talked a bit about him yesterday and the Thunder overall on the recap show where we did a bit of a Northwest Division quarter pole review. He was 5th in -1 rankings over the last 2 weeks, and since then he's 55th. Now that is not a realistic representation of where Jalen Williams sits rest of season, but there were so many indicators that what he was doing was going to drop off at some point. Whether it's a permanent drop off or it's sort of much like Tyrese Maxey sits somewhere in the middle there, I think that's more realistic. Johnny Collins was 19th, which again, there was so much stuff that he was doing that just made no sense in terms of who John Collins is as a player. He still has far exceeded any expectations that I had this season, and being very clearly wrong on what he was going to be able to do. But he's now 54th in those last 2 weeks. I actually think there's probably a little bit more decline that does come from John. Even not including the fact that I do think there is going to be a minimization of role or a trade or something or a fake injury at some point later in the season. I do think that maybe he can drop even further than that. OG Anunoby was 33rd, and since then he's 83rd. There was a lot happening there again that just wasn't sustainable. It wasn't what OG was going to continue to do. I thought that was relatively straightforward sort of stuff, and that has turned out to be the case. And then Brook Lopez is one of the biggest drops you'll see. He has been he's obviously gigantic, but he's been a gigantic roller coaster player this season. He was 27th. And since we did that show, he's 153rd. That doesn't mean that he's a droppable player. It just means that there's going to be the reality of what Brook is. He's going to be an up and down guy. And at his age, I would say that you're probably more worried about downs than excited about ups. But 153rd, I don't think he's quite that bad. That's just been a really cold stretch. Capped off by that 3.3 rebound game last time out. And the last one there is PJ Washington, who he dropped a little bit. I still think there might be a little bit more coming from PJ. He was 55th. He's dropped down to 70th. Some of that time has been with Luka, and some of it has been without Luka. And the games without Luka have really been the ones where Washington thrived, and he did the thing where his usage was able to spike and his efficiency spiked at the same time. And if you know anything about PJ Washington, you know that efficiency spikes are just not going to be the long-term reality. That is not who he is, and it's not who he'll ever be, and I don't think he'll ever be something that we need to bank on. All right. Should we talk about buy low players for now? Let's do it. Let's start by going to Golden State. Let's talk about Stephen Curry, who has had some on and off knee problems this season, ankle early in the season. He has been ranked 37th over the last 2 weeks, and obviously I'm not really going to sit here and tell you that I think Steph Curry is going to be the 37th ranked player. In the preseason portion of the season, preseason part of your fantasy basketball, I was a little worried about Steph and the increased usage he would have, maybe causing some wear down effects. But we did expect there was going to be a big bump in usage, and there has been. And Curry has been putting up strong numbers for the majority of the season, but recently it is a little bit down. Now, it is only 4 games, but it's 33 minutes a night. It's not like he's been limited during that time. So what's been actually going on here with Steph? Well, for a start, where are the defensive stats? He has 1 steal and 0 blocks in the last 4 games. All right, so that's an obvious one. He's shooting 38% from the field. And it's very easy to look at Steph and go, he's scoring 25 points a game with 7 assists and 5 rebounds. And you go, okay, they're all really good numbers. But there's actually way more that can happen here. He's hitting 33% of his threes. He's hitting 44% of his twos. Imagine Steph Curry at 33% from 3. So he's only hitting 3.8 per game. And you go, that's actually a lot, Josh. And it is. If your name's not Steph Curry, he's like he should be a 4.5, 4.9 threes per game player. And yeah, Steph Curry, I know he's not Nikola Vucevic. We know that. He's not that level of shooter, but he's a pretty good shooter. So we'll see where those threes go. And then also just not hitting his twos, which means he's got a well below league average true shooting over the last 2 weeks. It's going to come up. Now, there are risks with Steph. Obviously, his age is number one of them, and that means increased injury risk plus increased injury recovery time. So when we're talking about where do we buy Steph, you can see these numbers on the screen if you're watching. He's averaging, he's the 37th ranked player over the last 2 weeks, and he's averaging just 39 fantasy points. I think he's a 43 to 44 fantasy point guy. I think he's like a borderline first round player, but I'm not giving up that player to get him. I'm not giving up a top 12 player. I'm not giving up a top 15 player. I'd be, if this is a possible thing to do, and if the manager of Steph is a bit frustrated with his production or his missed games or whatever is happening, a top 20 guy, maybe. That's the sort of option I would look at. And then I would see where we go, because there is still risk. Per game, I think top 12 is definitely realistic. But there are some injury risks there with Steph. I just think it is pretty obvious, and I think whoever has Steph would know that it's obvious, but you never know. I see wild and crazy things happen all the time in fantasy. I see it happen in leagues that I manage. I see it happen from leagues that followers win. I just see random things all the time that I go, that is actually crazy what is going on. So don't ever think that these things are impossible. It might not happen, but it's always worth... People, I don't know if you know people. I don't know if you've met humans before. They can be a little emotional. They can be a little bit reactive. They can fly off and make insane comments at any point. Like, this is what people do have real short-term memories. People telling me consistently how soft Emmanuel Quickley is, and the bloke's never wants to play. He's continually not out there. He's too fragile for the game. The bloke's averaged 76 games a year for the past 3 seasons. And he's just had some bad injury like this season. But now that makes you soft and useless and fragile and you're weak as piss, whatever you want to say. right? But that's because that's what's happened like right now. So I don't think anyone's going to come out here and tell you that, I think Steph's a bad shooter, but they're also go, this guy, he's always missing games. He's out all the time. You never know, man. You just never know the way that people react to stuff. So it's always going to be worth just a quiet little tap on the shoulder. Go, hey, what do you think? And then it's about that negotiation. It's about the discussions. It's about, commiserations with that person if you need. Hey, man, I'm in a pretty good spot here. If you want something to work out for you in the short term, maybe you like this player, they're a fan of this team, whatever. There's many ways to negotiate trades, but feel pretty confident Steph's not going to be that bad as we move forward. We've got some more buy lows, of course. We've got some more sell highs coming up. Where are we going to go next? I think we might go to Los Angeles next. But before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return and get ready to tackle all the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 dues and you get $150 in bonus bets if you win. I'm not sure that FanDuel takes dollar dues considering it's unavailable in Australia, but that's okay. Our national currency is not to be joked about. FanDuel, though, is also not to be joked about because they are the best. The Sportsbook app at FanDuel gives you everything that you need to place those live bets on the NFL. All the live stats, bang, on the same page. All of the play-by-play, it's there as well. So all that info that you need to get those live bets absolutely cranking is there over on FanDuel. So get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, I teased it like an absolute professional legend. We're going to go to Los Angeles. Do you know who I am going to be talking about as a buy low in Los Angeles? I'm not even tell you what team it is. It's in Los Angeles, but the team is not Los Angeles. It's LA. It's the LA Clippers. And I'm going to tell you that I think that at the moment, Ivica Zubac is a bit of a buy low player. And you'll go, well, Zubac has been a huge surprise this season, Josh. Is anyone actually going to think that that's a buy low or he's just reverting back? Well, that's, I think, part of the idea behind it is that he started out so unbelievably hot that people didn't really have a baseline of that level of production for Zubac. And now that he's cooled off, people might be going, I guess this might be it. I'm here to tell you, I don't think it is. I think he's actually better than this. Zubac is 115th over the last 2 weeks. That's using weighted -1 rankings. He's averaging just 30 fantasy points a game. And he's been fantastic all season. Or most of the season. He's averaging just 12 points. He is averaging 11.5 rebounds, but 0.2 steals, 0.8 blocks. So this man who's been a 72% free throw guy is shooting 46% from the line. He's also not taking many free throws, which I guess sort of helps you in that area. But the one thing that free throws do, you can be punting free throws and whatever, right? But every time you hit a free throw, guess what it gives you? A point. Right? It gives you a point every time. So irrespective if you're punting free throws or not, if he's a 45% guy or a 60% guy or a 70% guy, and it gives you one extra free throw a game, and then he gets a little bit more confidence and gets to the line a couple more times, and you get 1.5 points, 2 extra points a game. Well, that's 1.5 points and 2.5 points extra a game. And that is where percentages are multiplier categories. Is that you can be punting them, absolutely no problem with that. You don't have to pay attention to that actual category in your value in a category league, even in a points league. You're not really worrying about the efficiency necessarily in a Yahoo scoring. ESPN a little bit different, clearly. But the fact that if your percentage goes up, that means more shots have gone in. Theoretically, if you're taking the same attempts, then that means more scoring. And that boosts that up. And then in fantasy points league, that's more fantasy points. So, irrespective of if you think Zubac is actually just a terrible free throw shooter now, I'll get him back to 58. Get him to 62. Give me 1 extra point a game. Get a bit more confidence. Go from 1.8 to 2.6. 3 free throws a game, whatever. Give me 14 points. Where are the blocks also? Where are the blocks? What's going on? He's only averaging 31 minutes a night over this time, which is well above his career high numbers because Ty Lue just refused to play this man many, many times. But he is averaging for the year 15 and 12. He's blocking a shot a game. Last season he was 1.2 blocks. The season before 1.3. He shot 72 from the line last season. He's at, and this is also, I don't understand. He's at 53% from the line this season, and I don't understand that. So I do think there is a real possibility of massive free throw improvement. But also remember, the 2 most variable categories year on year are steals, And I reckon, I haven't done the numbers this season, but last season, the number one most variable category was free throw percentage. And I think it might be this season as well, with people taking 15, 16, 17 percentage point swings. And I don't really know why. So this could stay really low, but it's also got 20 percentage points to jump up without even hitting last year's number. So I think there's a lot here for Zubac that is going to improve. We are going to talk about another LA player a little bit later on, but now we're on a buy low. We're going to talk about an Indiana Pacers player, and no, it's not that one. It's this one. It's Pascal Siakam. Who? Because I detailed this the other day with Halliburton. Despite what you might think about Halliburton, he's actually been really quite good the last 2 weeks, but this man hasn't. What's going on with old mate Pascal Siakam? Because he is just... Now, this is maybe a theory we can take a look at, but is it like one of those ones where, their powers transfer? If Halliburton's playing well, Siakam isn't, and then vice versa? Siakam's been pretty steady most of the year, but over the last 2 weeks, he's the 106th ranked player. He's averaging under 34 fantasy points with only 18 real-life points. He's at 7 rebounds, but only 2.6 assists. He's never been a big defensive stat guy. He's actually hitting his shots at a not a bad level. His free throws anyway, because he's never been great there, 80%. But there's a lot of other stuff that is down. Now, it's very easy for me to sit here or you to sit here, and whoever wants to sit here and do this and go, yeah, Josh, his assists are down at 2.6 per game. That's because Halliburton's playing better. Not really. Halliburton's assists they're actually down as well. So it's not that. I think it's part of the general malaise of this team and the fact that they just look terrible, and I don't really know what's 100% going on there. Siakam is averaging 3.6 for the season, so he's down at 2.6. It's a sizable difference. 2 years ago in Toronto, this man averaged 5.8 assists per game. Now, he's obviously not going to do that in Indiana with Halliburton controlling stuff. But 2.6 is an incredibly low number. He's also hitting 53% of his shots this season. He hit 54 last season. But now he's rolling at 47 on the back of 32% from three, which is relatively normal, considering he's not a good three-point shooter. But 54% on twos, well, that's where we need to improve, because he's actually shooting 41% on threes this season, Siakam, and 57% on his twos. But at the moment, it is a ridiculous cold streak. So not only are the threes not going in, the twos aren't going in, he's not generating assists, so his field goal percentage is down, his assists are down, his scoring is down, his usage is marginally down as well. And over his last 4 games, it's worse. He's averaging 14 points a game with 1.5 assists. That's horrid. So he's a tough one for me in this respect, because there will be people who think Siakam is a top 40 player, and to them I say, no, he's not. And he never was, and he should never have been considered in that area in categories. Points league is a little bit different. I think he's like a 36 to 38 fantasy point player. But in category leagues, he should have been in that 60s area, and I think that's sort of where he sits. But he's well below that. So be really cautious about the sort of player that you give up, or how you include him, or how you value Siakam in category leagues. He's not as good as some may think he is, but I also think he's way better than what we're currently getting out of him at the moment. We'll look at, which way should we go now? Well, let's go to Phoenix, actually. And Bradley Beal is here. I wish Bradley Beal was doing a little bit more than this, because he's not playing particularly well. And this is nothing to do with him being injured or having these multiple issues this season. That has all been frustrating, and he's had plenty of lower body problems, ankle sprains, whatever. Like these things happen all the time to players. That is the nature of playing basketball. If you've ever played, you've never even played. If you've ever played basketball, you're jumping up and down and standing on people's feet, and that happens all the time. He hasn't had too many of the problems that he's had in the past, like the hamstring stuff. The calf strain was a little bit annoying and very weird. But it's not even about that. That's not what I'm talking about here as a buyer. That is not why Beal is struggling necessarily. Over the last 2 weeks, he's only playing 32 minutes a night. He's played 6 games over that time frame. So what's actually going on? This man is just not hitting any threes. And last season, his three-point shooting was absolutely elite. It was electric. He was a 43% shooter from 3 last season. He's 36 this season, except down to 31 recently. He's not even taking threes, and that's something I thought that Mike Budenholzer would really pump into him a lot more. And he has been until now. And there's been a little bit of a reversion here. Last season, 4.4 threes a game. The season before, 4.4 threes per game. The last 2 weeks, 3.7 threes per game. 4.3 threes per game over the last 2 weeks. But for the season, he's at 5.7. So that volume is down. I guess the confidence in shooting them is down. That's dragging his production down. He's never been a great steals and blocks guy, but he's at a very low number, 0.7 steals and 0.5 blocks. You should be expecting a lot more than that. He's at 1.1 steals and 0.7 blocks for the year. And where are the passes? Where are the assists? He averaged 5 assists a game last season. He's at 3.3 this season, and that is the Tyus Jones impact. But he's also down further, down to 2.7. So these are small incremental improvements. I think that his assists are going to jump up, but not to last year's numbers. I think that he's going to shoot better than 31% because it's Bradley Beal. And I think that when he does shoot better than that 3-point attempt number will go up as well. He's also got a negative assist, or not negative, less than 1 assist to turnover ratio. His assist to turnover ratio the last 3 years, 1.9, 2. This season, 1.4. That's low. The last 2 weeks, 0.7. So for those of you who froth turnovers, you know you're out there. That number's going to come down. 3.7 turnovers is just too high. Like, he's not going to maintain that number with those low assists. I think the turnovers will come down significantly from there. The assists will rise, and you'll get that bump. His usage is actually way up. He's at 26. Last season, he was at 23, and that's largely with Durant out. But usage is also, the turnovers are a factor there. So I think they're going to come down. I think the steals will go up. The threes volume will go up. The 3-point percentage will go up. He's ranked outside the top 130 over the last 2 weeks, and he's averaging just 27 fantasy points. I think he's a guy to look at in the 70s and 80s, that sort of a player, a 31, 30 fantasy point guy. So I'm sure the manager of Beal is frustrated. There is an injury risk there as well. But I think that given the way that the season has gone, I don't know that you have to give up a huge amount to get Beal in a trade, to be honest. The last name that we go to in the buy lows is we're going to go to New Orleans, and we're going to talk about Christian James McCollum. McCollum is not someone, as you're aware if you've watched this show, that I am not high on as a fantasy player. And last season, he made me look very stupid with that. Like, his numbers were out of control, huge, and he's one of those guys that and this is a problem that at times I have with doing this, is that I look at it and go, okay, well, when these guys are playing, what's he ever going to do? And then invariably, 4 of those guys go out. And that has continued to happen with the Pelicans team over time. And balancing that availability of others and how it impacts CJ is a tough thing to figure out through mathematical projections. But CJ is also just not doing anything exciting at the moment. And that is even while he is shooting he's got 21 points a game over his last 7 games with no Ingram and no Zion. He is the 139th ranked player there during that time frame. Now, to be honest with you, his fantasy points are actually higher. They're up. So the buy low on him for points leagues doesn't really work. I think it does in category leagues, though, because there are numerous things that he is doing that are really hurting. And what is wrong with this man's free throws? Just a cursory look at his free throws over his career. We'll start back to the 21-22 season. He hit 68% from the line. Okay, has he forgotten how to shoot? Maybe. And then he went to 70-70. That's better. Okay. Then he went to 83. And he's fixed it. It's back. Well, he's at 63 this season. And he's at 58 over the last 7 games. What is going on here? The general consensus on CJ is he is a good shooter. But what's that? He's also hitting 28% of his threes. And 3-point percentage is the biggest hidden category in fantasy leagues because it influences 3 individual categories and it doesn't get displayed on apps. So when you're hitting 28% from 3, well, that's going to take down so much of your numbers. His 2-point numbers, fine, 54%. That's actually way higher than anything he's done, which maybe there's regression there. He's also at 0.3 blocks. Now, I don't think CJ is a strong shot blocker, but he's got a history of like 0.6, 0.5, 0.4 blocks. And that's just little small things, but he's not hitting threes. Like that's simple as that. 28% from 3. He's at 31 for the season. He shot 43 last season. His true shooting drop this season to last season is outrageous. 59 down to 51. And over the last 2 weeks, he's under 50 true shooting. So again, that is way more impactful in category leagues than in points leagues where the volume is actually saving him. But actually in a points league, if he's getting the volume, which he's going to continue to do because Ingram and Zion are out, and he's already averaging 35 fantasy points, why can't that push to 40, 38 over this short-term period? It can. And for category leagues, he can have a run there. Like long term, I think he's around the 100th, 90th best player. But he can have a top 60, top 50 run really easily here. And it's just like, hit some shots, man. Hit some free throws. What are we doing? Block one shot extra a week and we're up. Get your threes up. Like, to drop 17 percentage points on threes is outrageous. That's last season versus the last 2 weeks. That is going to improve. I feel pretty good about that improvement. And I don't even like CJ McCollum as a fantasy guy. And I think you know that. We're going to come back and talk sell highs. Are we going to head back to LA? We sure are. But today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Yes, the Game Time app and the new feature they have brought out. You know what it is? It is Game Time Picks. What does Game Time Picks do? It saves you time. It saves you money. It saves you stress. It's out there. It's showing you the best ticket availabilities for the event that you want to go to. Whether it is your local sports team, it is your local comedian, a touring international pop megastar coming to town, Game Time Picks shows you the best ticket options. Throw in all their other great things. The views from your seat. What's it going to look like when I sit here? Well, Game Time's got it. You just open it up and that's how things look. Bang, done, sorted. Small events, big events, whatever it is, Game Time Picks will show you the best ticket options available. And that's, again, just the start of the great experience you have with Game Time. So take that guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, so that's 5 buy low players. But what about the guys who are just thinking they're better than they are? They're well above expectations, well above their head in terms of production. Should we go and talk about my favorite team? And this is one that is, I think, relatively topical. And I'm just going to do a quick double check on this because I'd like to know some information on where we're at with Scott Barnes. But RJ Barrett is a sell high. And if we have any information, I'm just going to double check to check. No, we don't have anything update on Barnes. I am worried that it is a potential Liz Frank injury, and that's going to cost months. I am worried about that. But that is, while there is a level of uncertainty here, and an uncertainty with Barnes and where he sits, and people will just think that Barrett's going to continue to cook if Barnes is out, that is a perfect time, I think, to try and cash in. So Barrett's been, like, he is a guy that I do have on multiple teams, points league and category leagues, because everyone that plays category leagues usually fades Barrett. And in the past, I've been more into that. But I also recognize what changed with him last season. I changed a little bit of my approach to ranking in players and that in category leagues, as you're well aware. And I was in on getting him. And it's worked out really well. But this is even better than anyone could expect. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the 35th ranked player, Barrett. He's averaging over 40 fantasy points. That's ridiculously good. I think he's more in the 60-70 for category leagues. I think he's more a 37-38 fantasy point player. There are a few things here that are just really standing out. And again, this is where taking advantage of the Scotty Barnes injury, which is going to cost him some time. I just don't know how long. But there will be an expectation that if Barnes is out long-term, that Barrett's going to keep rolling at this level. And that is where I would say probably not. And it's not that he's not going to be able to do stuff, because he will, Barrett. He'll put up good numbers. He's averaging 25 points a game over the last 7 games, which is obviously, like, a lot. That's 7 games in 7 days, averaging 25 points a game. He's averaging 7.6 rebounds and 5.6 assists in that time as well, which is ridiculously good. But how is he doing that? Well, the usage is up, but it's actually not like sky high. It's 29. His usage for the season is 30. So he might be able to maintain 30 usage. That's possible. But what is actually going on that is keeping that number high? Well, he's at 40% shooting from 3. He's at 61% on his 2s. Last season, he was 55 on 2s. This season, he's 51. I think 56, 57 is reasonable on 2-pointers. And that means his true shooting is up at 63 and his overall field goals are at 54. So it's as simple as this, is that there'll be these numbers. People will look at the maintaining with Barnes out, But if Barnes is out, it doesn't mean that he keeps shooting 40% from three. It doesn't mean that he keeps shooting 61% on twos. That's not what Barnes being in or out means. It means he'll probably take more shots, but that means more volume, and that means probably a significant dip in some of those percentages. And in a category league, that is where he has always had trouble. He is still never getting you any defensive numbers. Like 0.3 steals and 0.3 blocks over the last 7 games is horrific. That's Julius Randle-esque. The assists are good, and they can actually rise if Barnes is out. I agree with that. Not that you even necessarily argue with that, but I do agree that is possible. But the stuff that is really, really driving a lot of this production from him is just unbelievable efficiency. Unbelievable field goal percentage. Even his free throws are at 74%, which is not a normal thing for Barrett. So, and maybe you even wait on this and wait for the Barnes, if we hear the Barnes injury news, and then if that is a significant injury, then you might actually be able to sell him as a top 50 player. And in points leagues, he will be a top 50 player without any question. But you might be able to go top 20 in a points league. That is the level of expectation I think people will have. And while things are happening really well at the moment, there is a risk that a lack of efficiency and the extra load gig that is placed on him can drop some of that stuff. And in points leagues, that stuff can become really hidden in terms of where the value sits. So just be cautious on that. I do think that it is a sell high. I don't think you can maintain that level of shooting, that level of efficiency. The Barnes stuff gives you extra ammunition, I think, to be able to sell at a higher level. And that is what I'd be interested in doing. And I have Barnes on my team. I will investigate to see if anyone wants him. They probably won't because they're all listening to this show. But I will investigate that and see where we go with it. Let's talk about someone who used to play for Toronto, does not anymore, and that's where we head back to LA, and we head back to the LA Clippers because Norman Powell is, he's been great all season. And we did like Powell as a last late round pick 11, 12, 13 in the standard league when we heard the news about Kawhi. And we thought, well, Powell's going to start and his minutes are going to go up and his usage is going to go up and all that. That is exactly what happened, and he's been great. But he's doing just absolutely the most at the moment. I think he's more in the 80 to 100 zone player rest of season. And there is reports of Kawhi doing a little bit of work. Maybe he's back at Christmas. I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it, but it's possible. But it's not even about just that. There are just so many things about what Powell is doing which are just unlikely to hold. And you'll say they've held all season, and I understand saying that. I get where you're at with that. I just have some concerns about some of these numbers being able to stick. Over his last 3 games at only 28 minutes a night, and that's it. He's been back from injury and he's cooked in that time. But even if you look at his whole year numbers, he's hitting 93% from the line over those last 3 games. He was 83, 81, 81 the last 3 seasons. So there is going to be a drop there, but it's really the 3-point numbers, which is just continuing to be ridiculous. And Kawhi playing or not playing shouldn't really impact that much. He's at 48% on threes. And for the year, he's at 49. He's actually down on his year-long number. Now, he was a 43% three-point shooter last season. He was 40 the year before. He was 42 the year before that. But 49 to 42 is an incredibly large difference. And you might think, well, that's just awesome and awesome. It is. But if you're a 40% three-point shooter and then you shot 31, well, we'd all be going, what on earth just happened? But that is the same drop-off. If he goes from 48 to 39 or 49 to 40, it's the same drop-off. And it impacts a lot. He's also taking a lot of free throws. 5 a game. That has never been his game. Not to that level anyway. He attempted 2.3 last season. Now that was with Kawhi and Paul George there. But if Kawhi plays, that is probably going to drop. So is the 32 usage, which is what he's had over the last 3 games. And one of those was without Jim Harden. It's a tougher one to pull off because of the specter of Kawhi returning. But I do think there is something here. He has been awesome all season. I don't think he's going to maintain those numbers. He's been around the top 50 all year. He's averaging, 34 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. I don't think he's a 30-point guy. If I could get a top 60, 65 player back, top 70 guy back maybe, That's the direction I would go. Should we go to Chicago? What sell high Chicago Bull am I going to talk about? The answer will surprise you. It's Ayo Dosunmu. Dosunmu is one of those players that, again, full transparency, I don't think is as good as many others do. There are plenty of people who think this guy is a future star, and I admit, I did not love him as a draft pick at the time, and I very clearly got it wrong, right? Where he was picked in the draft, unbelievable value, should have been picked higher. He's not usually the type of archetype of player I like, and if he's shooting, older player who dominated as an upper age player. I don't like that sort of a guy in college. He has struggled at times with usage and role in the NBA, and it always seems like he needs two guys missing to put up big numbers. Now, maybe the Bulls do trade multiple players and he moves into a large role. I think if you're looking to put Ayo Dosunmu as a featured offensive player, you're going to be really terrible. And if I know the Bulls, they should be trying to be really terrible, but they won't. So Dosunmu's cooking at the moment. He's the 56th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. He's averaging 33 fantasy points, and largely in that time there's been no Pat Williams, but Kobe White's also been missing, and there was a weird period there where Zach LaVine was taking a step back. So he's up to 32 minutes a night, but you know what he's also not doing in that time? His usage is still really low. It's under 17%. That to me is somewhat of a red flag. That you're still playing at this really low usage number. So how is he getting the value? Well, he's shooting 43% on threes. And you might say that's not a very high number, and that's also true. He shot 40 last season, 31 the year before that, but he's also at 32 this season. He is just on an absolutely red-hot streak. And I don't think that he's that level of a shooter. But that's not even the major part of it, because he's at 71% on his twos. What was he last season? 57. He's sitting at 63% on two-pointers this season, so there's actually pretty significant decline possibilities across both percentages, not even just on the last 2 weeks. That means that he's 60% from the field he's shooting. He's a point guard. And that has pushed him to the, 56th ranked player with averaging 33 fantasy points. He's at 1.4 steals a game as well. Last season, he averaged 0.9 in 29 minutes. The season before, 0.8 in 26 minutes. This season, 30 minutes a game, 0.7. Now, steals fluctuate a lot. I know this. But he's never shown any ability to be a high steals player, ever. Apart from this 2-week period. So, shooting through the roof. Steals, very high. 2-pointers, 3-pointers, everything way up. And he's still only a low usage guy. And if Williams returns, does he go back to the bench and play 29 minutes? I don't know. I just don't have as much faith in Dosunmu as other people do. And that's okay. But if I had him and anyone wanted to chuck any sort of top 90 player my way, top 80 player, very, very happy to do that. In fact, I'd love it. Absolutely love it. Let's go to Houston. A few weeks ago, we had Jalen Green on the, the buy low show, because I said as much as I don't like Jalen Green, a lot of what he's doing here is just not going to be a realistic thing that he's going to keep doing. Well, that was true. He stepped it up in a big way, and now it's swung definitely the other direction. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the 50th ranked player in category leagues. He's up to 34 fantasy points a game. He's averaging 22 real-life points with 2.7 threes. He's at 1.7 steals, but there are a few things there that just are not something that I would want to bank on. The 34 minutes a night is interesting. The 26 usage is about the same as it's been all season. So what's going on here? The man averaged 1.1 steals this season, 0.8 last season, 0.8 the year before, 0.6 the year before that. The last 6 games, 1.7 steals. Has he all of a sudden become a steals expert? I would doubt that pretty significantly. Has he been a great free throw guy over his career? Not really. 80, 79, 80 over his free throw percentages. This season, 87. Kudos. You've improved it over this 24-game period. He's up to 91 over the last 6 games. Maybe he is just a very good free throw shooter now. That is possible. I think 83 to 84 is probably more realistic than 90, so you're losing a little bit there. And also, the man's a 33% three-point shooter this season. He shot 33% from 3 last season. He shot 33% from 3 the year before that. He shot 34% from 3 the year before that. You know what he's shooting over the last 6 games? 41. So, again, has he improved? Possibly. Or it's one of the Jalen Green patented Jollibee hot streaks. He's hollowed his way through to these ridiculous numbers. He's also taking 1 million free throws. He's at 4.5 attempts per game for the year. He's at 7 over the last 6 games. Absolutely everything is going right. And you might sit there and go, well, maybe he's figured it out, he's unlocked it, he's becoming this guy, but that would be the 4th time that people have uttered that phrase. And then every other time it drops back. And at some point it might stick. But even if it does stick, 7 free throws a game, 41% from 3, 91% from the line, 1.7 steals, all those things are coming back down. There's almost no doubt they're coming back down. So I would be very interested in getting any top 80 player back in a trade for him. He's at 34 fantasy points. I think if you can get a 31 fantasy point guy back, I'd be happy with it. Even if it is, you think a breakout or he's figured it out or they've turned this stuff over, whatever it is, there's a number of things there that there's reality between him being the 150th best player, the 50th best player. There's a reality somewhere in the middle. And I think that's where Jalen's going to sit. The last player we go to is one, again, that I'm just not a big fan of. And that has been proven out to be correct over many, many years, except this year it hasn't. DeAndre Hunter's been very good this season. I'll admit that. I don't have faith in him at all because I've watched DeAndre Hunter play for 6 years or whatever it is. It is true that the player ahead of him in the rotation, or at least starting ahead of him, Zachary Ricochet, is not very good. And Hunter is better than him, and that's not saying a lot of good things about Zachary Ricochet, is it? So what do we make out from here with Hunter? Because he's a 79th ranked player in category leagues. He's averaging 29 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. He's at 22 points a game. But I will continue to tell you this, my opinion on Hunter, and I may end up wrong with this long term. That is okay. When you do nothing else apart from scoring, you are absolutely beholden to that scoring coming on elite efficiency. And even these numbers, where he's the 79th ranked player and he's on a massive hot streak, under 4 rebounds, under 1.5 assists, not a single block, and 0.7 steals. They are horrific numbers. Yet he is just giving you these big, big scoring bursts on the back of stuff that has no chance of holding. None whatsoever. 22 points a game. Sure. Could he be a 20-point per game scorer? I guess if I really, really, really close my eyes and squinted, maybe. Could he hit 3.4 threes a game? Seems unlikely. But maybe if I squint down. He averaged 2 threes a game last season. The year before that, in 32 minutes, he averaged 1.5 threes. The year before that, in 30 minutes, he averaged 1.4 threes. So, yeah, Quinn Snyder is out here getting this man taking a ton more threes, and that is cool. I like that. His usage is way up as well, and I think that actually holds. With no DeJounte Murray there, he is taking a larger usage role. I actually believe in that. But I don't believe that he's a 49% three-point shooter. I don't believe that he's a 91% free throw guy. I don't. 80, 84, 85? Sure, go for it. 91? Absolutely not. He's not a 52 field goal percentage player either. He's at actually 48 for the season. He was 46 last season. I think 46 to 47 is a realistic number. But all of this, again, if that 49 becomes 39, that's 10 percentage points down. And that means that 3.4 threes becomes 2.5 threes, or 2.4 threes. And 22 points per game becomes 19 points per game. And 51% from the field becomes 48% from the field. And he becomes the 140th best player, getting you a combined 5 rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. And that's useless in category leagues. It's a streaming, fringe, worse Jordan Clarkson. In points leagues, he'll be better, but it is on the back of stuff that has no shot of holding. Irrespective if you think my take on him as a player is wrong, if you think that he is good and he's going to be useful, that is cool. Nobody can sit here and say that 49% from 3 and 91% from the line are realistic targets long term. And that's why we talk about sell highs. It can be whether I like the player or don't like the player. That doesn't really matter. I don't think anyway. Because irrespective of whether I think they're good or think they're bad, or you think they're good or you think they're bad, no one's going to be a 49% three-point shooter. It's not going to be real. It's not happening. And you play the probabilities that a man that's never been over 85% from the line will not be a 91% guy. You play the probabilities on that. So, at the moment, the man's cooking. If I could get a top 100 player for DeAndre Hunter in a trade, a million times yes. I'd probably even aim a little bit higher, to be honest, because people get seduced by the elite shooting and scoring. And that's the stuff that fluctuates the most. And I'm going to fluctuate my way all the way out of here. So, there are our buy lows and sell highs. A recap: buy low, Steph Curry, Zubac, Siakam, Brad Beal, CJ McCollum. Sal High, Rowan Barrett, Norman Powell, Ayo Dosunmu, Jalen Green, and DeAndre Hunter. Agree, disagree? Let me know down below. Hit the thumb on the video as well and subscribe also. And again, whether or not you think that these players are good or bad or set to regress or not, they did something good at times and you've done something good as well. Remember to keep that positive energy going. For as much as we can be analytical and critical of things, there are still positive things that happen in all walks of life, and having a positive mindset actually just makes you feel better. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.